Welcome back to the Linux Academy NGINX Deep Dive. In this video, we're going to take a look at modules in NGINX. We've used plenty of modules up to this point, and we haven't really talked about where modules come from, how you can get more modules, how you can know what modules you have available to you. And so that's what we're going to cover in this one. We're not really going to do much with them. We're just going to poke around in the files that NGINX installed and look at NGINX's configuration to get a grasp of how modules work. So currently we're inside of etc NGINX as the directory, and we're logged in as root. And if we ls right now, we can see that there is a modules directory. And if we ls-al, we will see that modules is actually a symlink to usr lib64 NGINX modules. But what's inside of modules? There's nothing there. And this directory is actually meant to hold dynamic modules. As of NGINX 1.9.11, NGINX has had the ability to load dynamic modules, and what that meant is you didn't have to recompile NGINX entirely if you wanted to add some functionality to it. You just needed to make sure that you compiled the module with the same settings that the NGINX binary you were using it with was compiled with. And this allows you to easily add and remove modules from an NGINX system that you're working on. And depending on how you install NGINX onto your machine, sometimes you'll have modules compiled in like we've been working with, or you'll have dynamic modules for a lot of the things that we're going to look at. And this modules directory will actually have things in it. If we go over to the NGINX documentation, let's kind of take a look at what's going on with some of these. Specifically, the image filter module is one that's interesting because it goes through and lets you modify images, but you'll notice here that it says this module is not built by default. It should be enabled with -- with HTTP image filter module as a configuration parameter when you're building NGINX. So this kind of points us in the direction of how we can tell if a module has been built in, and it's going to be with these configuration parameters. But how can we see these configuration parameters is going to be our next big question. And the way that we're going to do that is by using the NGINX binary. If you use NGINX-V, you will get the version that you have for NGINX. But if you use NGINX-V, you'll get a lot more information. Specifically, you'll get the entire configuration arguments. And it's really, really long. There are a lot of arguments that were passed in here, and you'll see a lot of them can end in _module. And if we want to take all this information that we're given right here and see a nice list of the modules that we have at our disposal, we can use NGINX-V, and then we're going to use a little bit of redirection. So we're going to redirect standard out to standard in. If I can hit the right key here. And then we're going to pipe that into TR, and we're going to substitute this with new lines now, just so we get them line by line. And then we're going to grep for any of the parameters that has module in it. And when we do that, we can see all of the modules that were built in by default. These are the additional ones, and there are three main types of modules that we're going to be working with. You're going to see HTTP modules, mail modules, and stream modules. And mail and stream don't actually need to be enabled by default at all, because what you'll see up here, and this is the exception to the _module rule, is that you could compile a version of NGINX that didn't know how to handle mail and didn't include any of the mail modules by removing the -- with mail option. Similarly, the -- with stream option is there. So we could remove both of those, and then we would have a much slimmer version of NGINX that couldn't handle a lot of things. But in most situations, it kind of doesn't matter if you have those installed. You probably don't need to remove them. You just choose not to use them yourself. But if you do want to limit the actual size of the final NGINX binary that you're working with, or the capabilities if you're letting other people do the configuration and you don't want them just randomly starting a mail server on your server, then these might be things that you want to consider. So these are the compiled modules. If you want to work with dynamic modules, we can come back over to the documentation, and if we look at the core functionality, this will give us the NGINX core module, and this will show us some extra things. So this is where include came from, this is where events, and a lot of the things that we saw in the nginx.conf file. But load module is a way that you can load dynamic modules. And dynamic modules will be files that end in .so here, and this will allow you to add things in and remove things if you would choose not to use them. But when we work with modules in this course, we're going to be working with dynamic modules. It's a new feature, and it's pretty nice to not have to recompile the NGINX binary that you're already using. And this does actually mean that you can then reload your configuration and add new functionality to NGINX while it's still running. So in the next video, we are going to go through and we're going to set up everything we need to so that we can use the very popular mod security web application firewall as a dynamic module with NGINX.